Actually, better not defending.
I think it's like.
People deluded, I'm back again.
Come on, Ian. Man. Come on. My guy in the building, I did him dirty. He's drinking juice and that, man. But special guest setting, special guest announcement, man. Alex, what are you saying, man?
What's up, man? How you doing?
I'm doing great, man. I'm sure you've seen the Arsenal news. We're buzzing, man. I see your Twitter threads and everything. Obviously, people, make sure you're following the different knock. Again, I can't imagine you don't know about his and his team's content. But if you don't, again, all you got to do is click the link in the description. In fact, better yet, in the title, and go and take in your technical analysis. Now, obviously, I've got you here for several reasons, man. Before we get into it,
You're looking hench.
huh?
You're looking hench.
I'm trying. Allow me. I'm trying. This guy just threw me off, man. There's me trying to be professional, and then there's you, man. Don't let the vest gash you, man. I got a smaller size than that. Like this guy, you threw me off. What I wanted to ask you. In fact, the first thing, yeah. Now that you've obviously had time to consider everything, how would you sum up Arsenal's season, man?
As in the last campaign?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say, isn't it? Because we're in the middle of what feels like, I think, and I'm sure we'll get onto it, possibly the best summer window we've ever had. Very possibly. If everything gets done. And I have my reasons.
It's a big shout, you know. Why though? Why? You got to let people know why you think that, man.
We'll go on that. Well, I think if you look at it from a contractual perspective, Saliba. Well, if we say some window in like maybe like the last sort of, last end of last season, Saliba, Martinelli, Saka, Ramsdale. I'm probably forgetting someone tied down to a new contract. Gabriel, but that was kind of end of last season.
Benjamin White pending. Nelson and Ketty have signed deals recently as well. Well, and Ketty last year.
Yep. I'm probably forgetting someone there. We've got Win the Dog, do you know what I mean? So it's transfer wise, we've strengthened every single position on our pitch with, I would say, players that come in and not only provide depth but provide.
Hold on, the Timber and Rices and Havertz, man. I've got my questions for you. Hold off on that. Man.
We'll come to that. And then in terms of off the pitch stuff, we've got news today about Gary O'Driscoll and Steve Brown and stuff. And look, they've been great servants to the club, but there's an opportunity for growth there. If we can get, say, Ødegaard tied down to a new deal, if we can get, say, one or two more in, I see no reason why, in terms of business, I'm not saying like the players long term, whether they're good or not. But I'm saying in terms of what we needed from where we were to where we are or could be at the end of the summer, I think that could be the best qualitative leap we've ever done. And then so it's difficult to say in terms of the season itself because that feels like the thing that's happening. But look, I mean, I think when was the last time we spoke? It was sort of towards the end of last season.
Towards the end of last season, yeah, man. Like a month or two ago.
Yeah, and obviously it was disappointing. Everyone was disappointed. And there's no hiding from that. But I always say disappointment and failure are not the same thing. And if you said to every single fan at the beginning of the season,
he's about to preach, people. Go ahead, man.
Would you say, I'm not saying it's perfect, but let's be clear. Would you take a title race with City? By the way, the best team I would say ever seen.
Don't even know the title race. If you ask any Arsenal fan in August, regardless of how the season's gone, as I echo your thoughts, we crumbled. There's question marks over that, and we need to do better. But if you asked any Arsenal fan last season, based on how the season before where we crumbled fourth, would they take second in August? They'd a bit your arm off for it. Anyone who's not saying that is a liar. That's not to overdo it with second. Obviously, there's no trophy in finishing second, but it marks the progress, regardless of what other teams were doing. At the end of the day, we can only be accountable of ourselves, and any talking points that we found ourselves in, like the league, that's because we're doing what we need to do, really, and that's kind of what we need to do next season. So you're speaking facts on that, man. I don't think anyone could disagree with that comment.
No, I think you're bang on. I think I think we get this thing where our expectations, once we get to a certain play, like it's kind of human nature as well. I mean, it's like part of the reason, things can be hard for people. It's like you get to a place you think you want it to be. What's that Drake line? There's times I wish where I was where I used to wish I was here. Whatever that line is. So
man, the man quoting Drake.
classic Drake. Like just
this guy is a legend, man.
But like just like that, you never arrive. You never get to a place where you feel as though you're like, now I'm happy. of course, there's always going to be a thing where you feel like, okay, yeah, well, what about that? What about that? And we'll get in Rice, and then we'll go, but what about someone up front? And then if we signed an Osimhen, then we go, yeah, but what if someone gets injured at the back? Let's get another centre back. There's never going to be a time where we feel happy, but what there is going to be is a proper process, which we've seen, and that's what we're seeing continuously. And I think we're now at a point where we are able to sort of, what's the word, shop from the top shelf, and that's what last season did for us. So I think it can only be viewed as a positive. Like I understand there's negatives to it, but it can only be viewed overall as a huge step forward.
And I personally think, like yourself, I think it's fine to praise and critique where appropriate, have your question marks. I personally think Arsenal can't win. They say we penny pinch. You know, our first initial bid for Declan Rice, for example, is almost identical to City's. No such language was said over there. Obviously, people say whether it is a fluke or not, we'll have to prove them wrong. But people said last season was a fluke. All the other teams will improve. Now the language has changed to Arsenal got to win the quadruple, the Tour de France, Wimbledon and everything, or it's a failure. No, but like, and I'm not one of them Arsenal fans because I try and tell Arsenal fans it's not right, but we need to ignore these media outlets. They don't like us. They never will like us. They know we give them free clicks. We know there's no consistency. I'm not saying it's right, and it's definitely not, and it isn't fair. But I just find the language surrounding our football club very scary, really and truly, especially when they talk about signings and things. Last summer, we spent a lot of money, of course, but when you quantify, and I'm not making excuses, we spent 100-odd million on a few players. City, for example, spent that on Grealish. We're at 2 different transitional periods. So we can't win. With that being said, though, what is your expectations for next year? Because obviously, speaking for myself, I'd love to win the Prem. I'd love to win the Champs. Whether we can do that's another thing. I'm an Arsenal fan. I love the FA Cup. And I'm not trying to set our expectations on the floor. But for me, as a minimum, I want to win the FA Cup. League Cup isn't the biggest of priorities, but you're in it to win it. I'd say a minimum of a top 3 finish. Obviously, I'd like to finish first, or if that's second. Champions League, I'd love to get to the latter stages, but my absolute requirement is simply getting out of that group, not embarrassing ourselves and taking it from there. So what would you say is the ambition? Because some would say, rightly so, a lot of money's been spent. Arteta's got a lot of potential, and we're not going to place something on the shoulders of Arteta, a bit like some of the players, if we didn't believe they could do such. So what would you say is the ambitions for next season then?
Yeah, that's
a mad one, isn't it?
It's really tricky because I think what the temptation is to go, we've got to win the league and we've got to get some semi-final of the Champions League and win the FA Cup or something, because that would be an improvement obviously on this season. But Arteta himself said we are ahead of schedule. We're ahead of, he said to, I think it was to ESPN or something in about March or so. He said we're in phase 3 and currently, and I think he said to Jamie Carragher in December, we're a little bit ahead of schedule. So I think it's about consolidating for me. I think I'd like to
show
see
with the new contracts being given and whatnot, as much as bringing in players.
Mm-hmm. There's a great graphic by a guy called Scott Willis on Twitter where he puts basically the peak ages of all the positions in a line, and almost all of Arsenal's players are like just before the peak age position.
They're flirting with it, yeah.
Yeah. They're just about to be there. They're eyeing him up over the club. So they are about to move into that area. So I think the next 2-3 years, I'm expecting maturity. Yeah, I'm expecting a move into its maturity and properly challenging for all the competitions. Look, I think I said this in a video recently. There's no point having a project and having a process and believing in it, which I've always done, and I've always, you can check the receipts. I've always backed Arteta, and I've always said I believe in what he's doing. But there comes a point in a process where you move through the phases, and if at some point you don't go, no, now is the point where we have to try and reach that height. Not to say there was no point in the process, but like there has to be a point where you go, no, now we are aiming for stage 5. Stage 5 is probably maintaining and trying to win Premier Leagues and Champions Leagues. I don't think we're there yet. So I'm, in terms of expectations for next season, because we're just slightly pre-peak, we're probably a year or 2 out from where we are going to be properly challenging. Probably need one more summer window just to get everyone there. Then players that are entering their peak years. Yeah, I'd say I'd probably say I'd be very happy with second again and a very tightly run title race. Obviously, I want to win first. I agree with you. Round 16 or quarters of the Champions League, I wouldn't be surprised if we went further, but I'd be happy with that. A decent run in the FA Cup, hopefully a final or a semi-final or something, and similarly in the League Cup, I think would be a very good season. And the thing is people go, but it's not a trophy. Who I'm imitating. It's not a trophy. It's like, Okay, well then, if we won a League Cup, then if we came,
You know what they would say? That League Cup is only relevant when your team win it. Like, if I'm shameless, like I've been dissing my United friends in my group chat. If we go and win that, that's a madness. I don't care about the Community Shield. If we win the Community Shield again, I refer to it as the English Super Cup. I'm shameless. I'm very shameless like this. I can't lie to you.
We're winning the Tour de France, mate.
Yeah, we're winning everything. Mate. So might good. Even win Summer Jam or WrestleMania or whatever next wrestling events is coming up as well, mate. Like, it's absolutely crazy. But I think you're right with that. I think, you know, it's ultimately football is escapism. You know, it's something we can identify with. You know, as we all know, you know, life, there's many things to be happy about, but living crisis, living costs, all of these things are going up. And despite all of that, and people feeling the pinch, they're still going to go to games, still going to have season tickets, because it's a sense of belonging. You love the team, and definitely what Arteta has done. And out of all the things, I echo your thoughts about believing in Arteta. The one thing I would really two things I like about Arteta: he's always made difficult decisions and lived or died by them. You know, the world wanted Granit Xhaka out, for example. The world didn't agree with Aubameyang's contract. I remember Reece Nelson starting ahead of Pepe when he first walked in. And there's a series of those things he's done, you know, revitalizing Granit Xhaka. And I also, on top of that, like how the thing that struck about me in his opening interview signing for our club is that we all need to sing from the same hymn sheet. We need the fans on side, etc., etc. So I can understand, you know, definitely home and away. The fans are crazy. We're all together and united. And obviously we've somewhat exceeded expectations last season in second. So I can understand wanting to go the other way. And I'm not trying to belittle expectations. Neither am I saying don't dream, but kind of echoing what you're saying. It's not that we're not at a level we're not, but we're not at a level we're not. Like, we're not quite there yet. We're good for 38 games. We need to be great. Personally, I think we need to improve in terms of a lot of defensive metrics, general street smartness, and handling ourselves mentally, because I think as great as City are and the super team, like you said, let's be honest, like, we threw it away for ourselves. And to be honest with you, I know last season, the tail end of last season will be highlighted, but it's actually in games we've won. It's actually in what would be the poster games of last season, you know, the Bournemouths, the Aston Villas away, the Uniteds, where there was evident signs that we need to do better. So there's a lot that we need to improve. And I don't like to keep saying this young thing, but it is a young squad with the additions coming in and the experienced players and another year under their belt. We just have to hope for the best, man, really and truly. My next thing for you would be actually, what do you make of Kai Havertz's signing? Arteta keeps describing him as a midfielder. What was your initial thoughts? Now, I'm pretty sure I can speak for you when you might have, like myself, you might have concerns about Kai Havertz. There's a lot to like about him, but Arteta's a mad scientist. We'll let him work his magic and then see like if it works or not. But come on now, no one was really screaming Kai Havertz to sign for the club. It took everybody left. What do you make of it?
Yeah, I mean, initial reaction, like, that, of course, but then you go, okay, right, let me humble myself. I'm a fan. I don't know football to that level. Like, you know, I'm just giving my opinion and my thoughts. What we've seen every single summer is a change, some kind of change. Whether that's been to the kind of lone pivot, whether that was last summer with the inverted fullback, whether that was moving away from the back five we saw in the beginning of the first season. Like, there's every single time there's been
the role of the striker with Aubameyang versus Jesus, and to a degree even Lacazette in his last season. You're right.
Bang on. There's been change every single time. The only thing we can guarantee is change. So then I think we almost have to sort of reverse it and go, okay, rather than where does Havertz fit into this team, where does Arsenal fit around Havertz? What is Havertz good at? And therefore, how can he take us to the next level? There's a clip of Arteta at the end of last season where someone says, like, how close are you to being the team that you expected? And he said, there's huge margins. We can be much, much, much better. And he makes a whole list of things.
When you say it or when I say it, people say we're saying every other thing. So when the general Mikel Arteta is saying it, hopefully it holds some weight, man. You're right.
You'd hope so. You'd hope so. But he's saying, you know, set pieces, transitions. Like, he's saying literally everything we can.
Street smartness, every damn thing could be better.
And you were right about what you said about the poster games of last season. As much as we look back on those with good memories, we were terrible at periods of those games. Like, we
could have lost or drawn them and had no complaints, honestly.
Exactly. So then how do we improve? And then Kai Havertz comes into the picture. I think Kai Havertz he's been misprofiled and he's been misused at Chelsea, in my opinion. Kai Havertz, if you look at what he's best at for Germany,
forget that false nine stuff, man.
For Leverkusen, it's behind the sort of front line. He is elite at dropping to the pockets, turning, picking up the ball and picking the
Makes
right
fantastic runs off the ball as well.
He's honestly, his ability to fill in and out wide, his whatever. I've got one of my guys on a different night, a guy called George Vutsas. You should have one here, by the way. He's a genius.
Get him up, set it up then.
I'll send him your details. He's a coach himself. He's got his UEFA B, and he talks about how essentially Kai Havertz could be the tip of a diamond. So we think about last season, we had it's not quite right, but the three in midfield, and now he thinks we're going to flip it and have basically a tip of a diamond. Havertz will move from there. He'll drop into the pockets. He'll drift out
simultaneously. Wide. You've got Odegaard tying in, doing that as well.
Exactly. Odegaard could go to the left. And also, I think one of the big aims for next season is getting Saka and Martinelli closer to goal. How do you do that? Well, what you need is someone to fill in out wide. And who's one of the best players naturally drifting out to the wide areas and coming back inside? Kai Havertz. So you start to look at his profile. You start to look at the height as well. It's something we don't have in our front line. You know, I think our next biggest player after Xhaka's gone is Odegaard, like 5'9" or 10 or something like that.
That's crazy.
And you know, it's some height as well. I do worry about him under contact. I do worry about him in a block. But people say, like, oh, he can't play the 4-4-2 block. He can't do what Xhaka does. Yeah, he can't. But he can do what Havertz does. So we're probably
he's two very different players. He's his old man. Exactly. And he actually, for me, he makes third man runs, which I actually think is great because he's going to run in behind. And as you see, when he makes the run in behind, people hold their position. And that might give more opportunities to, you know, the Odegaard type finish against Spurs, for example, where he's outside the area and he hits it. You know, I do think Havertz is going to benefit a bit from the Arsenal tax in that we're ahead of our project with Chelsea. To be fair, whatever we have to say about Havertz, not a single player really thrived in that Chelsea system last season, specifically the attackers. A bit like what you're saying, I do think he's been mismanaged or misunderstood really in that you could fill in at false nine and you probably will at occasion at Arsenal, but I don't think that's you. I think you need to get back to what you was doing in Germany, where you was more of a midfielder at times, pulling out to the right hand side and doing the link up play and things you need to do really and truly. What do you make of Declan Rice then? Clearly a gigantic signing.
Buzzing. I mean, it's unbelievable, isn't it? I can't believe we've done it.
You speak for me as well, man. That's good. Yeah. I don't know what to say. Disbelief, mate.
It's like a career mode signing. It's crazy. Yeah. It's honestly crazy. And I never thought, you know, can you think back to like the summers of 2015 where we signed like Petr Cech and no one else, Mustafi, Lichtsteiner.
We used
Dennis
to debate
Suarez.
Is Holding and Marie our best centre back pivot? We've come a long way, Arteta. Thank you, man. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, man. Oh my God.
Yeah, literally. So it's
trenches.
It's crazy. I think also he's another person who can, you know, speaking. I think that the Havertz and Rice signings are massively linked in the sense that when you have someone who is, I would say, possibly the best player in the Premier League at winning the ball back, specifically winning the ball back, interception stats, I think together last season, Xhaka and Partey per 90 got to like 1.2 interceptions per 90 each. Rice on his own is 1.7.
And that'll probably drop because he probably win the ball back a lot less at Arsenal and have to be on the ball a bit more because we're not doing what West Ham are doing. Quality player, man.
So I think there's certain things where we can, if we're looking at roles next season, that kind of stabilizing effect of a Granit Xhaka that we had. If we had a Rice in there, who is, you know, I think Partey is a fantastic player and has certain qualities, but Rice, in terms of transition control, winning the ball back, getting the ball forward, there is a level to him that Partey, I don't think, has anymore, especially because of his legs. I wonder whether we can afford to play with a bit more of an adventurous left eight or an adventurous diamond or an adventurous midfield, because we do have that. And I think, you know, Rice is someone who not only can bring an incredible amount on the field, but also off the field. We just lost Granit Xhaka, and he comes in, and I think Rice
leadership qualities, man, immediate leadership qualities.
And we it's a bit soft factor, and it's a bit, you know, does he do card tricks? You know, that Roy Keane thing, but like it's, you know, but it matters, and it's that thing of, you know, I've been thinking a lot recently. People try and downplay this kind of stuff, but psychologically it has a massive impact. Do you remember, like, basically all the Invincibles and people who used to play against the Invincibles were like, we'd stand in the tunnel next to them.
Yeah, the game's done by then.
Do that and be like, oh my God, we've lost. Exactly. Because they're massive and technically secure, and that's what Rice is. So I think it's just an unbelievable signing, and it's the perfect signing. And supposedly Mikel's wanted it for 6 months, so it sounds like it's a lot on his shoulders. So fair play to him.
I'm happy for several reasons, because obviously that's the top target. I know everyone's quick to attack Edu because, you know, they just think he's just sitting on his phone posting barbecue pictures. So I'm happy he gets that. Happy Declan Rice obviously gets his dream move to Arsenal. Like you said, it's been done for months. Arteta gets his first choice. I think there's so much to like about Declan Rice because he's someone that lifts, in my opinion, he lifts our midfield. You know, we need physicality. As much as I like the Wenger ball, the Arteta ball, whatever you want to refer to it as, it does feel like we're going against the grain, where Wenger said it's all about high transition, high turnovers. We need that. I think Declan Rice can get the best out of Partey. Partey can get the best out of him. They can both be utilized together. Equally, one could be dropped out. Obviously, he's a long-term six. I do think him and Benjamin White could be groomed to play in that Stones role. Obviously, I don't want to see it do it, but if push comes to shove, you know, like when Saliba got injured last season, for example, you'd rather Declan Rice fill in at centre half than, with the greatest of respect, Rob Holding. And like you said there, I think, you know, obviously when you look at Declan Rice, he immerses himself in a football club completely. Like you look at, you know, obviously the first team won the Europa Conference League. They won the FA Youth Cup. He was there, ironically, at the Emirates, in the change rooms and things like that. And although he's young-ish, he might as well be a veteran. He comes in a European trophy winner 200 odd times for West Ham, hallmark in the Premier League, plays for his country. I see his signing in terms of experience a bit like Kai Havertz, a bit like Martin Odegaard with everything he went through prior to signing for Arsenal, a bit like Ramsdale being in relegation battles and things like that. So I love it. I love the sign. I would have loved to have kept Xhaka, Partey, had Rice and all of these options. But I think Declan Rice, I'm intrigued with what Kai Havertz, what better yet, I'm intrigued with what Arteta can do with Kai Havertz. I'm ecstatic about Declan Rice. And I do think Timber, that's the next thing we're getting onto. I think Timber's been a bit slept on by Arsenal fans, what he gives our depth, you know, whether he's going to play centre-back or right-back, Benjamin White, Saliba and him. Make sure you give Arteta a problem and you're not the ones to be left out. What do you make of Timber? Because when you look at progressive passes and all of that, and what while he's not a centre mid like Zinchenko kind of is by trade, he gives us a lot on that right-hand side. Respectfully to Tomiyasu, he doesn't really give you too much going forward. Benjamin White, obviously a quality player, but he's probably a bit like Saka, had to overplay at times. So what do you make for Timber?
I think Timber, and actually similarly to Havertz, is Rice fits everyone's eye very quickly. They watch him play for 10 minutes and they're like, yeah, love him. Like he's one of those guys you go like, yeah, get him in, sign him, whatever the cost. Timber's someone who I think takes a little bit more thinking about. And once you have a think about it, I think you see it works. And I think he's also the kind of perfect transition player for a modern way of thinking about football. I think for many, many years, partly because of FIFA and Football Manager, but also the way Sky cover things and stuff, a fan perspective has been modeled into teams playing formations. They play in 4-2-3-1, and they don't move out.
And it's not that people don't understand. There's formations within a formation. Sometimes it might look like a back three or four or whatever, really and truly. And when the problem is, when, like you said with Sky, when they do seem to do this, it's just fancy heat maps, and there's no context behind it, really.
I don't think I've ever seen anyone ever mention build-up structure on Sky. So
it's crazy.
In, out, and in transition, in and out of possession, in transition. I think Mikel will want options. I think generally he'll probably play as 3-2, but we also saw at the beginning of last season a 2-3. I think Timber gives you options on the right side of a 3. I think he gives you options further up in a 2, a 3-2 on the right side of a 2, inverting, if you want to call it that, or the advanced fullback. I think he gives you options on the far hand side. I think Mikel might want times where it's almost a 2-4, and Timber's your widest man on the right. I think he can do that as well. And then I think he can play as a centre back in a block, and I think he can play as a right back in a block. So there's a lot of
and
things.
22 as well, man. The wealth of experience. He carries resale value. He carries longevity. Going back to what you said about the graph with Kit in peak ages. So right pedigree, and he's also got leadership qualities. So again, Arteta's doing what needs to be done, man.
Yeah, 100%. And I think he just gives us options, and I don't necessarily want to. Just going to find that graph because I think it's so important. Just got what else? Yeah, but I think basically he gives us options, and that is last season we would have absolutely died for a player in that mold at that time. The one thing I will say is I can't see him playing in a 2 as a centre back
consistently. I agree.
Because I think just because of his height, and you watch Saliba play, you watch him 1v1 against those like top class strikers. Timber's a very good defender, but he's a bit more of a chaos defender, controlling those 1v1 battles. Like imagine almost like the Ollie Watkins situation that Saliba didn't deal with. That Timber, I don't think can do that, and I don't think he's got that sort of ability to control space as well in behind. I'm not saying he can't do it; he can do it, but
not to the standard of William
Saliba level. So I don't think we'll see that, but I think he can be world class at the positions I outlined, 100%.
What do you make of Saliba's new deal? I mean, beyond the obvious, clearly we're happy, but it's a 4-year deal. Obviously, that takes him to his 26. That tells me personally, in the next 18 months, we're going to be revisiting this, which I personally think, away from being an Arsenal fan, his agent deserves his commission. That's the perfect thing you got to do for a 22-year-old guy that's now finally got clarity over his Arsenal future and is making inroads into the French side, and someone that clearly is admired by rival Premier League teams and the big clubs from abroad. Really, I think he's a very good defender. I think he's got the scope to be a great defender. I think there's many things he can improve, and I'm not going to lie, I'm happy about Saka and Martinelli, but I think Saliba's was the most important because he feels like the one that's always your half here, half not sort of thing.
Yeah, it's good. I think. Look, obviously, you'd prefer a 5-6 year deal. You know, there's no
all them Chelsea 8-year contracts, the death row contracts,
all those contracts. So yeah, I think you'd prefer that, obviously. Yeah, this is just before we go back to Saliba. This is one of the things. So this is slightly old. This is from March, but you look at the midfield. Those are the guys who are post peak, and pretty much everyone in our attack is just about to enter their peak years. We've also added, for example, Timber, who would come in, sort of 22-ish, who would come in just behind his peak.
This is sick, man.
There's
look at our team.
Rice would come in just before sort of his peak as well. If we signed, Romeo Lavia, he'd come in pre-peak. So we're moving the only place in our squad that is definitely post-peak is our midfield, which we're clearly moving to.
And the last time we spoke about that, I said the one area that I think needs improvement is midfield. And I like to see, I still think Xhaka and Partey are good. I don't think just because we've got Champions League, we need to ruin the relationships at centre half and midfield. But it is an impending problem. It's like it's almost the analogy of fix the roof while the sun's shining. Xhaka is 31 in September. Partey is getting on a bit. While Partey was, by his own standards at Arsenal, ever present. I think he was available for like 33 of the 38 Premier League games, and some he was on the bench. You're never 100% confident. And going back to what we said earlier, if we want to long-term be a team that competes for many trophies, the best quality you can have as a footballer is being available. Saka, whether we need him to be rested or not, is available. Gabriel is available. Declan Rice, obviously, I hope there's no Arsenal tax, but the man's ever present for West Ham. He's playing 40, 50 games and saying, I still want to play more. So you're speaking facts, man.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's it's been clear, and I also think in terms of succession and planning, if you asked me in 2020, how would you approach this rebuild in terms of what would you try and leave to the last place on the pitch to rebuild in terms of moving back in terms of age? I would have said midfield, because midfield is the area you don't
midfield and defense at the time, without a doubt.
You don't want 19-year-olds in the middle of your pitch. Like, as much as they can be talented or whatever, that like you lose control of football matches. And now
you can have one or two. You can't have a consistent, unless it's an anomaly like a Cesc Fabregas or a young Jude Bellingham or even Declan Rice when he came through. You're speaking facts. That's why I don't mind Lavia, because I don't expect Lavia to start week in, week out. I think he'll be phased in. He'll get 60 minutes here, a start here, and then maybe by the end of the season, something else is saying. Even with Lavia, people got to remember, assuming we signed him, he's only been at Southampton for a season. He's only been playing top flight, consistent football for a season. And if they watch the last game of the season, everyone makes mistakes. But if you saw that mistake he made against Liverpool playing out from the back, as much as fans want young players, as you know yourself, fans are very harsh. When a young defender makes that mistake, or a striker, a young Balogun, he might miss a tap in. They don't care for experience. I think fans want it all the way. They want all these young players, a consistent team, all these players to be given chances. And some of them are the first to turn on individuals. So it don't really make sense, in my opinion, man, really. I don't think you can have your cake and eat it, but you're speaking facts. What my next one would be to you then, obviously, we've just assuming whether we sign other players or not, and outgoings is another thing. But just looking at Kai Havertz, Timber, and Declan Rice, do you believe that brings us closer to winning a Premier League title? Not what you think Arteta could do and things like that, what you can see in front of you. Because I find myself struggling with that question myself. I believe yes and no. I believe Declan Rice brings you to that. I believe Timber does, of what I could see with depth. Kai Havertz, I'm relying on Arteta there with the greatest of respect. And I can't really say that about Champions League winner as much as I might.
Yeah, I mean, Champions League is so much about, it's not luck, but you have to rely on the draw a bit more. Yeah, it's hard. By the way, your tabs are a disgrace. Just to say.
I thought you would allow it, I actually thought you'd leave it alone. I thought you'd leave it alone. I thought, boy, he hasn't mentioned it.
Viewers, hit up the comments and tell him close some of those.
Bro,
tabs.
it's every day.
Oh
It's
my
every
goodness.
day. I need this, man. I need them. This is how I live. Just let me live. I ain't killed no one, man.
Brain function.
Listen,
Anyway.
you think Arteta ain't got more tabs than me? Like with all this stuff. Like, come on, man. And Carlos Quaver and all of them guys. Come on, man.
Carlos Quaver.
Quaver. I can't even pronounce his name. I'm
Leicester.
thinking of a footballer. Yeah, you had it. That's why you're here. You saved me. There you had it. I lost the ball in midfield. He swept up Saliba. There you have it.
Carlos Skips. Carlos Walkers. Yeah, I think
this guy.
Yeah, I don't know whether I don't know. I think what they can do is take us to an. I think they can give us 5, 6, 7 more points. I do believe that.
That's fair.
But so I think they can breach the 90-point total. But do I think City...
We're starting to talk about winning leagues then, unless City do 100 points?
But that's what I'm saying. It's like City. What did Liverpool do and didn't win the league? Like 96 points or something.
Yeah, yeah. So City are like the Grinch, man.
Yeah,
we need Pep to go. We need Pep to go because I think it'll be open season when Pep goes. I still think City will be up there. It's just they've got the resources, the squad, and the mad genius of Pep Guardiola. That's just. But I think people know Pep's a GOAT, but they really sleep on it, and that's why I'm even more kind of upset with Arsenal last season because although I didn't expect to be in there, regardless of what I'm saying about Pep, it was in our hands. And people always say I'm a stickler for the finer arts and the finer points. That's because you have to be against Pep. You have to be. You know, there's no point crying if you don't win games. That's why, in my opinion, I genuinely believe games we've won, the warning signs have been there. That's why I'm not necessarily, what's the word? I can't even know the word, but I'm not necessarily shocked by what led to our demise against Liverpool and West Ham, for example, because games against Brighton, games against United, games against Leicester, actually, where it's been far gone conclusions, we haven't necessarily got clean sheets and we've let cheap goals happen or we've switched off for a moment. Don't get twisted. I would love it, but I don't expect 38 Premier League clean sheets. But until Arsenal are mentioned as one of the best teams in this league and in the world defensively, I kind of have to rein in a bit because to win a league, it is about your how the whole team defends, and it is about, to a degree, how good are you at your worst. And I think when we're good, we can take on the world. There's been times we've not been great and slugged it out. So as you were saying, the building blocks are starting to develop at the club, but that's in comparison to what Arsenal used to be and to what we are now. League title, as you know, it's a completely different ball game. Again, I wanted to ask you this as well. Obviously, what do you make for Smith Rowe next season? Because you know me, I'm the head of the Smith Rowe fan club. He's using he's using the Euros as a great platform for a pre-season. He's got himself a final. He's getting goals and assists. Obviously, you've mentioned it. You know, you've got Kai Havertz, you've got Odegaard there. Fabio Vieira is a bit of a forgotten man. Declan Rice is there. Partey's coming, just banding them all as midfielders. There's more players and less opportunities. What do you make for Smith Rowe, man? It's a tough one, I know.
I think there is a cultural change coming at Arsenal, or there has to be, in the sense that I don't think you can hold these two beliefs simultaneously. One, we should be competing with Real Madrid and Bayern Munich and Man City in the Champions League semi-finals and the finals. We should be competing with those clubs, and also just give Fabio Vieira and Smith Rowe another couple of seasons. See what happens.
Yeah, not everyone can. I mean, Smith Rowe can stay. You're my guy, but not everybody can go, and that's what I mean. In that, you know, let's be honest. Smith Rowe, Saka, even Joe Willock and Nketiah and Nelson, they all benefited because in previous regimes we was doing years and years of the wrong thing. So we found ourselves where these young players have a platform. Mm-hmm. It's very difficult for players coming in now because, as you kind of alluding to, we're bringing in Declan Rice, we're doing this, we're doing that. Like, I feel genuinely sorry for someone like young Charlie Patton. Though it's just a harsh reality of life. Really, you've got, you know, all of these players in front of you, all have been capped. Even someone like Lokonga, who I would play you ahead of, he's been signed for 20 million. He's been capped by Belgium. We're trying to move forward as a club. It's like City. You get a young Foden, Lewis, Cole Palmer. These guys come through, but not everybody can make it here, man. So I'm with you with the Smith Rowe and the two beliefs. Where are you at with Nelson's new deal then? Because he's another one. Like, you signed a new deal. Are you necessarily going to play? Yeah. You made 18 appearances last year.
Well, you know, people sign new deals and move on within 6 months, don't they? You know, I think realistically, in terms of what we needed to do this summer, I still believe we'll go back in for something in the forward areas. I'm not sure quite what that is.
Striker or winger then? Before you carry on with the Nelson point.
I did a I'm going to plug myself. Yesterday, if you go on
You
my
have
Twitter,
to plug yourself in this life, man.
ain't nobody else going to do it for you.
Exactly,
I
man.
did a I've just put it in our chat. I did a sales thing yesterday. Where
Here comes
essentially
Mr. Fred, man, Freding again.
Mr. Threadman. That's my new Twitter name. And basically, the reason I mention it is because I think there could be a lot of there's basically potentially between if we sold all these players. So let's just have a little look through. If we sold Maitland-Niles, Runarsson, Trusty, Suarez, Nketiah, Balogun, and we've sold Jack, obviously, Tierney, Marquinhos, Pepe, Tavares, Holding,
20 million for Holding.
I said between 10 and 20 because he's
Brother,
homegrown.
you know damn well we ain't getting no 20 million. You better change this graph immediately.
He's homegrown. He's homegrown, my friend.
Man, you ain't getting that for him. We ain't getting 45 for Partey. We'd be lucky to get 30. Tavares, I'm with you.
That's the highest.
Pepe, I'm with you.
The lowest, I'm saying between the two.
Yeah, no, I hear you. It comes down to how good Edu is at negotiating, but yeah, Balogun, I think you're bang on the money, 30, 35, rising to 50. Cedric, do you know what it is? With the Cedrics, the Runnersons, the Pepes, I think we'll take, like you said here, the lower end because I just think free up the wages really and truly. You're right still.
I think it might be a case of with Pepe just ending his contract mutually.
Even that, ripping it up and things, because as Edu said, it's killing the club. Very dramatic from our chairman, or sporting director, better yet. But
140 grand a week. But basically, the point was, if we got rid of all those players, which by the way we won't, but we've already done 2 with Maitland-Niles and Xhaka. If we got, say, 5 or 6 of those out the door, that is a great deal of money. That is a great deal of money. At which point, I believe we could go in for a possibly.
You could have even added young Charlie Patton here for a couple of quid.
Yeah, possibly. Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, I didn't think of it. Or like Brook Norton-Cuffy or other young players.
Yeah, they'll get loan fees or sold permanently. What, we've got 6 million for Marie now, obviously, because he's going over there. We got extra 2 million from Fulham because they stayed in the division with the Leno deal. I think you're bang on the money with the majority of this. Marquinhos is an interesting one. I do think maybe the Marquinhoses, the Tavares, the Lokongas, they're the kind of ones that maybe you just go on loan essentially again. Eddie Nketiah is an interesting one as well.
Didn't think about Mari, actually. It's a very good point. I
think you're bang on.
I think basically there's a lot of money coming in, and therefore we could 100% go and do something up front. But I think
killing Mbappe.
Don't say that word. But I think we should talk about that. I think basically there's a possibility that we could do something, another big thing. I think we probably spent a large proportion of our budget and probably don't want to spend much more just on out of our own pocket.
It'd be lovely if we could go back in for Caicedo, to be honest, but
something, whether it's in the midfield or whatever.
Just another blockbuster.
I start to look at the futures of Smith Rowe and Nelson, whatever. And I think with Nelson, there's probably too much to do to get rid of someone who can provide an ample backup on both sides, probably on the left for me. So I think, just get him on a new deal. It probably won't be too much. He's a good player. There's clearly something there. And even if he goes in,
Arteta believes in him crucially as well.
But someone like a Smith Rowe, I just think we can't end up in a position where we're going, just give him more time, I'm sure Smith Rowe is a lovely guy. I'm sure he's a great servant for the football club. And I'm sure he could be a great player. But at some point, you're Arsenal Football Club, and you have to, if you want to be competing with Real Madrid's,
tough decisions are needed.
They don't go, oh, but we've got Valverde, Camavinga, Tchouaméni, da-da-da. They go, there's an unbelievable midfielder on the market and we want him. Get him in. How are we going to fit them all in? Don't know. They've just given Ceballos a new deal. They've just given Camavinga a new deal. They've just given Modric and Kroos a new plus 1 year deal. I appreciate they're going through a transition.
Bit like us tying people over, yeah.
But that's the level. So with someone like a Smith Rowe, I think if there is someone better in his position, let's go and get him.
I would say that to everybody. You're right. I'd say that with everyone. Like it'd be stupid not to say that. As much as I love Saka, if there was someone that's twice the player Saka is and we was able to do it, why not? Like, as much as I love these players, I'm loyal to Arsenal Football Club. I want the best for the football club. You get better players in theory, you should have a better chance of winning better trophies. So you're fully right. For me, with Smith Rowe, the man just got to stay fit. You have to stay fit this year. I love Smith Rowe and someone like Tomiyasu, for example, but if you can't stay fit, and me and you are here doing a video next year, probably different tone of voice from myself. I'd also extend that to Fabio Vieira because, first season in the Prem, moving to a new country, arrived when you're injured, arrived at, in my opinion, the best and worst time as Arsenal Football Club. The best time because we're clearly doing better. The worst time is because, you know, we're getting stability and players are actually playing well, so there's less opportunity. But you haven't galvanized your ability, your chances. And obviously, you've seen Fabio Vieira, better yet, has seen a couple of midfielders arrive now. And I agree with you in that not everybody, you know, you don't just get rid of everyone, but not everyone you persist with, and not everybody is going to come good in that regard. So I think an ability of ours has to be, we've got it wrong, because as much as you can do due diligence, scouting, all the statistics in the world, signings are a risk and they just don't work. Crucially, we just need to make a profit. Like, you look at someone like Marquinhos, end of the day, you got him for 3 million quid. You buy it, you sell him at the lowest point, as you said here, for 5. Quick profit, we keep it moving, the sun keeps shining. Austin Trusty had a great loan spell at Birmingham, probably one of our loan players of the season, probably is not going to make the grade here. American and all of that stuff, and carries marketability, especially with what we're doing. Keep it moving. I do think Balogun and Tierney, they're kind of the ones that I don't think Arsenal actively want to sell, but for one reason or another, we might be pushed to accepting a bid at the right price. Again, Balogun's a great example because it shows what the academy should do. Players can progress and do what Saka is doing, or equally be sold and be reinvested. And I'm pretty sure you've seen it. Every Arsenal fan is saying, oh, he's got to play. If he doesn't get 20 odd league goals next season, either on loan or permanently or whatever, people are going to change their tune. As much as I think Balogun should get a chance and I like him, we don't know for sure he's a goal scorer. He's just arrived. That's your first season. The Kanes, the Aubameyangs, etc. They've done it for years. Balogun's at the right stage of his career. He's 22. He's doing what a 22-year-old should be doing. Obviously, you know as well, in this day and age, potential is the biggest buzzword. So who knows, man? Cedric, you got Cedric and Holding. You'd be the first out from this list for me, really. Like Pepe as well, but as you know, that's very technical. Lokonga, there's talk of going to Burnley on loan. Holding, you know, do you know what it is with Holding? You're not very good, but in a weird way, I like you. Like, I don't like to keep saying you're not a good footballer. Like, you just shouldn't be here now. Like, there's something about Holding, really. But I do think Holding's gone into that territory now of fantastic guy, voice in the change rooms. Matt Turner said when he moved to England, he weren't driving and he was driving him to work. That's all great. I love the family aspect. But fundamentally, kind of echoing what you said, if we make friends here, that's great. We're not here to make friends. We're here to win stuff. We're here to do this football stuff. So, yeah, man, it's a techie one. I'm sad to see Xhaka go because I think at least for one more year, I would have liked to have seen that, but probably something that needed to happen a long time ago, really. You're speaking facts.
Holding can go in the Gunnosaurus costume.
Yeah, you could Gunnosaurus, go to all the secondary schools and give talks. If that's what you want to do, you can do all of that. That's great. You could do all of that. We need someone that could do that. All the skills challenges and all the YouTube content, that's right up your street, man. But football, myth. And even with Rob Holding, I think people are unfair to Holding. I think he was unfairly made a scapegoat. Evident limitations. Evidently, you're nowhere near Saliba. You kill our build-up play. You know, we tried to drop the line deeper. He's in trouble. We tried to play a high line. He's in trouble. But I genuinely believe, you know, he weren't as bad as a lot of us, myself included, thought. Regardless of how Holding played in the games that we suffered, you know, I think it's very lazy to look at Holding because there was more we could have done. And ultimately, as much as I like Mikel Arteta, if I'm praising you for how you're assembling the squad, if we're in a reality where we're in a title race and you're relying on Rob Holding, then you've got to hold that L as well because you see Holding more than us. You know he's not good enough, really and truly. So it's a bit of a mad one. So that, you know, the Vieiras, the Tomiyasus, the Tierneys, the future, it's in the balance, man. What do you make of actually Balogun and Partey potentially leaving?
I think again, it's sort of what we've just been talking about. It's like with every single player, if we can get a better player, what do you think is more important, the £50 million or keeping that player? Like with Granit Xhaka, for example, if it was like the 10 million reported earlier on in the summer, I'd have just kept him because I think, well, for me, if we can
more
keep
value in him staying in
around, there's more value in him staying for a year for 10 million. If we're getting 21 million, okay, well then we
someone 31 in 2 months' time. It's good for all parties. He gets a 5-year deal over there. He's got a year left on his deal at Arsenal. It makes sense. It makes sense. You're right.
I think with Balogun, I'd say probably get him into pre-season, see what he's about. I think he's probably a little bit too similar to Jesus for me. I think from a first team perspective,
that's my issue as well. I want a more physical man.
I want an Osimhen. I want a Kane. I want a Haaland. You know, someone in that profile of Benjamin Sesko, Højlund. They're not all the same players, but you know they're similar-ish in that sort of
emerging sort of strikers sort of thing,
line leading kind of number 9s. So I think we need that. I don't think we need a Balogun, but you know, let's see what he's about. And then if we get a good offer for him, sell him. And if not, then you know, like it's a tricky one because, as I said, it's this mentality shift where I think a lot of the reason people are saying keep Balogun around is because
he's a shiny new toy, man.
Yeah, and he's an academy kid, and I think people are going, oh, you know, he's one of ours and he's whatever. No. Like, if we want to compete with them, the Smith Rowes, the Vieiras, the Baloguns, the whoever, anyone,
Don't throw Smith Rowe in there with them, man.
No.
Let's not forget double figures, number 10. He ran, so a lot of these guys could walk. I felt personally attached with that one. Get your Smith Rowe stocks, people. He's back next year, man. But you're right on the serious note.
No one is safe.
No one is safe.
Look, if we could improve on Bukayo Saka, I would want to improve on Bukayo Saka. We can't. He's one of the best right wingers in the world. He's possibly the best
in the world. Not bad for a left back, eh?
Exactly. He might be better than Brandon Williams. Hard to say. If we can improve on William Saliba, let's do it. But I don't think we can at that age, at that time. So every single person that we look at, we've got to say, okay, are they improvable bond? It doesn't matter if they can stick around and do cow tricks, as Roy Keane says. I keep saying, it doesn't matter what they do, get in the Gunnosaurus costume, whatever. If we can get a better player for them for a good price, do it. That's what I say. So, and we get attached to players and ideas. And this is the thing. We're Arsenal. We don't want to become this absolutely ruthless club. Like, for example, the El Neni thing. I love that. I love that we go, no, you've been a servant to us. We're going to support you through your recovery and get you on your way, and therefore you get an extra year. A lot of clubs wouldn't do that. I'd never want us to become that club, but I also want us to be
case by case basis for me personally.
I also want us to become the club with a big up. I want us to become the club with Smith Rowes, with Vieiras going. You guys have got 6 months.
Stop throwing him into that, man. Like, sorry. Did you say Fabio Vieira? Stop throwing him into that, man.
No, but this is the thing. This is the thing.
You're right.
We'll all be complaining at the end of the year if we don't win. You know, not all. Some people will be complaining if we didn't win the Premier League, if we didn't win the something in the next couple of years. But the same people go, no, don't sell Smith Rowe. Don't you? I'm saying.
But that's what I was saying. That's what I was saying at the start, though. That's what I was saying at the start. Is the very people that say these things are the first to turn on them. For me, if Smith Rowe cannot stay fit and obviously be available, then we need to rework it, because again, it's now harming your process. Hopefully with the surgery, I know you've seen all the comments around his surgery and his groin and painkillers. Hopefully there's something done in that regards, if I'm completely honest. But you're right. And even with Balogun, if we flipped it and Eddie was the one at Rems and Balogun was doing exactly what Eddie did here, the language would change. Now, for what it's worth, I think Balogun has a higher ceiling than Eddie. I think he's got a bit more about him. Like you, I'd like to see the rule ran round him at pre-season, but we don't know if he's able to do things, and not everyone can get chances, and obviously only a certain amount of players can start, only a certain amount of attacking players can be on the bench. So a bit indirectly, whether you're a 10, an 8, a winger or whatever, you're all kind of fighting with each other, because you're either tempting Arteta to change his system or showing him that you should be available. I do also think we get hung up on things, because if we want to challenge for everything, we need a squad. And if nothing worse, I can't verify Fabio Vieira, but the Smith Rowes, the Teenys, the Tomiyasus, assuming they stay, nothing worse. There's some quality squad players to have, really. Whether they're happy with that is down to them, and down to them to talk to their agents to either leave the club or force Arteta's hands to change things. So you're right. Kind of to wrap this up, though, I've got 4 questions from my subscribers. The first thing would be from Apollo. He said for you, do we miss the days where we only know about signings when they're actually signed, in brackets Ozil 2014?
I want it to be an Mbappe question.
Scared.
Yeah. But I mean, it's kind of, it's like when you were in 2014, you wanted to know about the signings. So it's like, it's the modern world we live in. Ultimately, when there's a bit of money to be made, people will do it, and there's that capitalism seeps into everything. There will always be the tendrils if there's a little bit of money, and there's the transfer market is a market and is a chance to make money within itself. Fabrizio Romano, I mean, perfect example of a guy who he's a celebrity sort of from knowing about transfers, which shouldn't be the case, but there's an excitement, there's a fervor there, so he can make money, streams and profits and whatever. So I don't know, it's just a natural extension of the market, I think. And as much as I would love to, wake up to a press conference and read in the newspaper that Sol Campbell signed for Arsenal, we don't live in that world anymore. And if you do, then go live in a cabin in the woods if you want to. Like, it's up to you.
See, for me now, I remember when it was on teletext or like you said, the newspaper. Like I remember my neighbor showing me Thierry Henry in the Barcelona presentation and just crying my eyes out. But I would say it's a good thing actually, man, is that, you know, obviously it's a bit weird now. People are tracking flights, looking at gardens and all sorts of crazy stuff. And we do live in a day and age of everyone's in the know, better yet, misinformation. But I wouldn't say we miss those days, man. I think it adds to the excitement, really and truly. Not even just that, but like coaches changing and things like that. My issue probably is more the young players that we're finding out about 15, 14, 16-year-olds. I think that stuff's a bit crazy, but fair enough. Next question.
Just on that, by the way, I just
Go
wanted
on.
to say you're bang on. Like the I can never say his name.
Ethan, as I call him too. As I call him Ethan. Yeah. Big him up.
Is it Nanweri or Nyanweri?
I think it's Nanweri. I can't pronounce it. I mean, no disrespect in his name. You know, I need to hear a commentator say that. But lovely to see he's committed his future for what he's worth.
100%. But like, he's a child. He's literally a child. And
the young man, yeah. Like
some of the stuff I've seen on social media about him, about his character and whatever, like he is a child.
It's crazy. Even with Balogun, people are acting like they know the guy and things like that, and getting 2 and 2 and getting 5. Like being a footballer and dealing with social media is absolutely crazy. Next one would be: seems like PSG is going to have to sell Mbappe. This will mean Real Madrid have to raise funds to bid for Mbappe. Not sure about that. Do we see Tchouaméni coming in, and what does he bring to the table, especially with Rice also coming? Can both play? I think both can play. I think, you know, if we got both of them, it'd be great physicality. For what it's worth, don't buy that. I don't buy that Real Madrid have to sell to get Mbappe, and I don't buy that Tchouaméni is leaving. I'd love to be proven wrong, definitely where Arsenal's concerned, so I can answer that. Where do you stand on that?
I don't know. I don't know Madrid very well. I think, I mean, my amateur opinion, I think, on this is that there's got to be an opportunity there, surely. If they are signing Mbappe, fine. But I look at that midfield and I look at spinning top Ceballos. I look at
Beyblade.
The Beyblade. I look at Tchouaméni, Ceballos, Camavinga, Modric, Cruz. They've just signed
Valverde, Bellingham.
Arda guy, Bellingham. I
don't know if you said Camavinga.
They got that Brahim Diaz guy who
he plays out wide, yeah.
Winger. He's more of a winger, but he can play inside. So
Arda Güler's just signed as well.
Yeah, so
we get all the hype for our youth rebuild. Real Madrid, like, it's crazy, and they just signed Tchouaméni last year for what it's worth as well, didn't they?
Think so. There's got to be something in there we can do. I still believe towards the end of the window there's something we can do in midfield, especially if Partey goes. I think at the moment I'd be okay. I think there's a lot of depth in the positions, but I still think there's something. I wonder, maybe something we could do, especially if Partey goes. So who knows? Who knows?
You're right in that regards. And that's why it's great to do the bulk of your business early, because as you know, some players that were dead set and staying at their clubs are going to be available. Some players that were going to stay are now going to leave. You never know what's going to happen. Some players, you know, they might want to stay at their club and their hands are being forced. As crazy as it is, we're still very early in the transfer market. So again, I echo your thoughts. And for those who are not listening, we're not saying we'd love to be wrong, but we're not saying we're going to sign Frankie de Jong, Tchouaméni, and Mbappe after these guys we're linked with. But something could happen, especially if we can focus on some outgoings. But for me, it's going to probably take at least 100 million euros to get a conversation started, because that's what they spent on him. So who knows? He should have been at the Emirates from when he was at Bordeaux. And next question would be, you know, we can skip out one question because they've kind of just tied into the Tchouaméni stuff. But this would be a fantastic way to end it. Do you think that publishing a player's earnings puts a target on their back? In my opinion, publicly announcing something that doesn't need to be made public places unnecessary pressure on players, whether justified or not. I'd like to hear your thoughts on it. Where are you at with that?
Good question.
Cool. I got muted there. Shout out Richard for that question.
Yeah, good question. I think possibly, but I also think like how are you going? I suppose what it is this. This is a fancy term, sublimation. There you go. It's a psychology term.
Sound like you went private school or something there, man.
I did not. And essentially what it means is negative thoughts or feelings or even necessarily positive, whatever. But like if you've had a really hard day at work and you come home and you can shout at the television at the football, you're like, you bloody idiot, whatever. And it's
you're
like
projecting kind of thing, man.
Yeah, you're projecting. You're getting that emotion out. You're essentially, it's called sublimating your emotion through something more socially acceptable, more positive. That's what it means. And football is so emotive because of that reason. It's
So it
such a
has
good
grown man
challenge.
crying, screaming, calling Declan Rice a Judas, and you see how certain fans of a club are carrying on. It's crazy, this football game we love.
It's some people, you know, there's certain generations who like probably the only men they've ever said they love are footballers. Do you know what I mean? Like
People will
genuinely.
cheat on their wife, they won't cheat on their football club. This football is crazy, bro. Not me, disclaimer. Football's mad. Now, realistically, football's mad. Football's crazy. It's a crazy
Yeah.
sport. Crazy
Yeah.
sport. And we
Which
love
tells
it.
me that there's something deeper there, which shows me it's not just about the football, is it? It's about you and your life and what you believe in. You see this almost representing certain things about you. So the interest goes deeper. The interest is so I think at some point people want more and more and more information. They want to know not only what the player does on the pitch, but they want to know off the pitch and whatever. And at some point, again, we live in a world where if you can make money off knowing that information, someone will eventually be able to do that. So I don't think there's a world in which we'd be able to find space because people are interested. They want to know how much someone earns because then they can go 150 grand a week for that. Like that's what they want to be able to do.
Well, he doesn't care because
Yeah.
Football's crazy, man.
So they want to know it. So I think it's probably impossible to the genie's out of the bottle. People do know what it is.
Great analogy.
And also like another thing as well is I don't think it's necessarily taken into account, and it's something you mentioned earlier about Edu. I don't think it's necessarily taken into account how many people are involved in these deals. These like Declan Rice, it will be his family. All of his family will know about it because also his dad represents him. It will be Edu and Jason Ito, the sporting director,
And people in and around the football club.
Mikel Arteta, the guy who makes the coffee for the meeting, like
Richard Garlick as well. All of these
how
guys.
many people are involved in some small way.
Even if Declan Rice is at, for example, today West Ham Stadium and a bid's accepted, a chauffeur's gonna have to take him from A to B. That guy that's driving the blacked out cab, he's gonna be to his son. You never guess who's in my cab, mate. He's signing for Arsenal. You know, if Declan Rice goes and gets a haircut because he wants to look fresh for the presentation, the hairdresser evidently knows. So you're fully right. I would say it goes back to what we were saying about misinformation as well, in that we actually, until contracts or unless contracts are leaked, we don't know. Like you look at Eddie Nketiah, 100 grand a week is being shouted. I don't know what he is getting, but I very much doubt he is getting a base salary of 100 grand. There's probably all different base salaries. Again, apologies for the builders. There's all different sorts of base salaries and things of that nature. So we live in an age of misinformation. And I do think because footballers are at the forefront, you know, you can't really get at the owners because the owners got fancy villas in Barbados and that. Realistically, a player is not going to get 300 grand a week if clubs are not making more off that player, whether that's winning games, trophies, marketability, and the rest of it. So I don't think it would change because people would find something else to hate on. Again, I think it's very much an English fan thing where if you're not, we could be footballers. Me and you could be fucking shit, but we run around and clamp guys. We got desire, we've got passion, we've got this, we've got that. So there'll be something else to moan about for me, bro. There'll be something else to moan about.
We would be terrible. Let's be clear. I would be honking. But I think, like for example, like
sad, man.
Just to pick up on something you said, like even if it came to a point of like uber secrecy around like wages or whatever, or like to protect players, for example, like the clubs like would only release it's like highly classified information or whatever. It would come to, as you said, there would be something else that people cling on to. It would be, you know, they'd start targeting their houses or something, you know, like pictures of the way they live or, you know, their partner or whatever. It would just one thing turns down, the other thing turns up. We view these people through a certain lens because they're
forget they're human. Look at Pogba. Pogba can't dance at his effing brother's wedding without people saying stuff like.
I mean, that to me,
crazy.
Forgive me, that I think that has other undertones. But like, I think like there's an interest in players that it goes beyond just like a passing, you know, interest in.
Do you think it's a bit of insanity with us football fans?
I think it's a social phenomenon, and it's something that we've always, you know, it's a release. It's something that people feel emotionally connected to. It's a way people structure their lives. It's the way, you know, there's so many reasons why people are into football, and the interest is so high because I think ultimately we see ourselves represented in some way. We attribute our own successes and failures and see it through the lens of a football club. And like I think that's why, because it's like the ego. It's everyone's favorite person themselves. is put up in this this football club, and that identity is tied. You tie that identity to each other.
Absolute
I am
facts.
tied to Arsenal Football Club, and if Arsenal Football Club do well, I look good. And if
I've been a fan from these players. It's crazy, man.
And you go into work and whatever. So it's intrinsically tied to ourselves, and I think therefore the fervor and the interest and the following people online and looking at clouds and stuff like that, it's funny because it's so invested, because ultimately it's a communal.
You said it there, invested.
Identification.
You said it there, like, and it's never going to change, because sport is illogical, really and truly. Who would have thought that a game with 22 players trying to put the ball over the back of the net would capture the world, and in some cases, it stopped wars? It's absolutely mad, man. Yeah. But with that being said, it's been a fantastic hour, Alex, man. Again, what content have you got to come? Again, if you're not following the different knock, again, when this has come out, so obviously when you lot are listening, you just need to click the title and you can subscribe and take in all the tactical analysis, and the rest of it will be in the description as well. But yeah, let's get it from your mouth again. What content's coming out, man? You must have something on Rice.
Thank you, mate. Yeah, I did something on Rice a couple of weeks ago. I've got a video about what the biggest changes I believe are going to happen next season. So from a tactical perspective, about the youth integration and the sort of part of the cultural stuff I'm saying. I want to talk about sales at some point, so I'll probably put a video out on that. Got the podcast, the Different Knock and Arsenal podcast, which you can go check out.
Make sure you're taking that in, folks.
Also on Canon podcast with Babs 14 and George, the guy.
Big up them.
I mentioned. So yeah, all good. Someone said to me yesterday, I got a comment yesterday, and it was, "What the F are those headphones?" As in these headphones. And
I saw you tweet that, and then there was just some homophobe being a prick. Yeah. Social media is ridiculous, man. Like, the comment section is ridiculous. There's, as much as sport and there's a lot of good people, there's some clowns, man. I wouldn't even pay that no mind, man. But Alex, it's been amazing.
It's just funny to me. It's just funny.
It's fun, bro. All you can do is laugh, innit? Like, the fact that someone got there, typed that, probably retyped something and then posted that. They're insane, man. They're just hating, man. Like, they're just crazy. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy, because if they see you, they're gonna say, "Oh man, I'm a big fan of your content, Alex. Oh my god." There's weirdos out there. Don't even pay any mind, my guy, man. But I'm gonna end this. Everybody, make sure you're following the Different Knock. Follow Alex on his Twitter as well. Again, all of that's in the informations. Make sure you've liked, commented, comment your own thoughts, and we'll see you lot again soon, man. One love, everybody, man.
Thank you. Cheers.
There's always just that active and that defending. I think it's like